Welcome to the Finding Magic podcast, where we explore the themes of intuition, creativity, and magic, as discussed in my book, Getting into the Flow, to broaden our view of reality and understand how magic is created and sensed so that we can realize our true potential and create our lives as a purposeful and powerful and from an inspired, joyful place. I'm Vincent, so I'm your host. Let's get into it. So today we have Tim and Elise from Source 88. Elise Kovacs and Tim Lassig met in synchronous ways at the Cosmic Conference, Consciousness Conference at Uluru in January 2019. This activated them and catapulted them to the next level of their spiritual awakening journey and was the catalyst for them coming together as twin flames, life partners, and subsequently as business partners when they launched Source 88 in January 2020. And you'll hear a little bit more about Source 88 during the interview. So Tim and Elise are going to tell us about a time when they were separately led in miraculous ways to Uluru to unite as twin flames and begin their soul's purpose mission together. So welcome, Tim. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Perhaps we could start by you giving a little bit of background to this story. Where were you at before this conference?
Yeah, it's very interesting. 2018 was like huge turning points for both of us. And at the beginning of 2018, I came out of a 13-year relationship and found myself alone at 48 years of age, and was like, it impacted me way more deeply than I imagined. And I was sitting there reflecting on my life and kind of went back to old destructive patterns and was just trying to avoid all of the emotion and all of the destruction that was happening. And I just had this epiphany. I was like, if I don't change who I am and how I am in my life, I'll be here again at 60. And then I'll be here again at whenever. And it was just this almost like a dropping of the penny. And I was like, I need to turn it all around 180 degrees. So I'd struggled a lot with drugs and alcohol through my life, and I gave it all away. I stopped drinking. I stopped taking any form of recreational drugs. I stopped drinking coffee. I stopped drinking tea. And I finally committed to meditating every day. And just that alone was a catapult, energetically and vibrationally, a catapult. And so then I was like, well, I've got all this time and I've got all this energy, and I just started to see all these signs and synchronicities in everything that I was doing. Numbers. People would say, hey, have you heard of Confest? Have you been to Confest? I'm going to Confest. I'd be like, I'm going to Confest. I don't even know what Confest is, but I'm going there, right? And I'd go to Confest, and it just blew my mind. And I had this like huge awakenings, and then the next sign would show up. And Confest was Easter 2018, and it was this incredible heart-opening experience. And I came back and I was so open and like, what's next? What's next? And I was on my computer and the Cosmic Consciousness Conference came up, and it was $888. And I was seeing eights everywhere, eights. I was like, $888. And it was from Catherine Hand, who was a lady who I'd done a past life regression with like 5 years before or something like that. I was like, how random. And I was like, I just need to go there. I need to be there. I had no idea what it was about. Literally. I just booked everything, bought a ticket, bought flights, booked accommodation. And this was like maybe April or May 2018. And then just kind of got on with like, who am I going to be now that I'm not this person who was destructive? And so obviously then a lot of healing was coming up, and healing work and shadow work was coming up as I was letting go of the alcohol and all the things that had numbed me over my many years of hiding from my trauma. So yeah, that was like, okay, 6-7 months to go before Uluru, no idea, parked it over there, and just continued on my journey.
And meanwhile, in 2018, I was also in a karmic relationship, and I found out that there was betrayal and there was sex addiction. And so it took me to the depths of depression and anxiety, and even to the point of feeling suicidal. And so I actually checked myself into South Pacific Private, which is a mental health hospital on the Northern Beaches. And I went in there as an inpatient for 3 weeks. And in that hospital, they got us meditating every single day, and also supported us to find our own faith or our own spirituality. It was the topic of spirituality. And that really resonated for me, not being told what it should be, but to allow myself to find what that was. And also through meditation to connect more by going within, which was something I wasn't used to doing. So after I got out of that hospital, I ended the relationship I was in, and I said I was going to spend as much time, as much money, and as much energy as I needed to get my life back on track, but in a place that I guess I had never been before. So I started exploring alternative therapies, kinesiology. I went to Reiki masters. I went to a lot of psychotherapists and went down that healing route for a while. And then it came to, I was a personal trainer at the time, and I had a client, and now I'm aware that we had a soul contract. His name was also Tim. And I had seen this email. Interestingly, I got the email from Mick Turner, which is Catherine's partner. So Tim got it from Catherine. I got the email from Mick. And I remember going in my emails, and it said, Cosmic Consciousness Conference in Uluru. And I thought, what the hell is that? And at that point, I'd been watching a lot of Gaia TV. So I was exploring, and anyway, I clicked on it and I looked at this email, and I tried to understand what this conference was, and I just had no idea. I couldn't comprehend it. But something, which I now know obviously was my intuition, was pulling me and saying, I have to be there. I just have to go. And I tried to get some friends to come, because in my mind at that point, I was like, I can't afford it. And I couldn't get anybody to come with me. And in the hospital, they supported us to connect to and hand over to our higher power. And at that point in the time, my higher power I called the universe. And I sat at the computer one day trying to book Uluru, trying to book the flights, and nothing was working. And I sat crying at the computer. And I said, okay, higher power, if I'm meant to go to this conference, help me. And I went to work the next day, and it was the 20th of December, and the conference was only in, 2 or 3 weeks. And I had my client, Tim, and he said, hey, Elise, when do you go to Uluru? You've been talking about it. I was like, oh, I'm not going. I said, I can't afford it. And he's like, don't be ridiculous. You have to go. You've been talking about this. I'm going to give you $1,000 for your Christmas present. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And I had to work through receiving. I nearly rejected it, but I accepted. I went home that night. I booked in, it was such flow state. I booked my flights. I booked my ticket to the conference. I booked my accommodation, and I was going. And so my ticket was $1,111. And I'd been seeing obviously 1111 quite a lot. And then that took us to the 11th of January, the 11th of the 1st, 2019. And I flew into Uluru, and I landed, and I was standing at the carousel, and I just remember seeing this Tim. And now I see it, I feel it. I know there was this eye contact, that I had this recognition. And I remember thinking, he's all right. He's not my normal type, but he's all right. And funnily enough, I'd done a card reading for myself a few nights or weeks before that, after booking the conference, and it came up about the twin flame card. So I'd heard of this phenomenon, however you say that word, and I was like, right, I'm going to call in my twin flame. I'm going to do the steps, wear a rose, put on rose oil, write a letter to my twin flame, asking my guides and their guides to help us unite. And so, yeah, we landed in Uluru, and we ended up going to the same hotel, and we got off the bus, and I realized Tim was getting off the bus as well. And then we get to the front of the reception area, and I think I walked up to you, or we're in the line.
Yeah, I was in in front of Elise in the line, and I turned and she said, "Are you going to the Cosmic Consciousness Conference?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." And she's like, "Do you know what it's about?" I'm like, "I got no idea." And she's like, "Me neither. I got no idea." And then it was just this familiarity. It was like, it felt like we'd known each other for forever, but we'd literally just met. And we're talking and walking, and then we walked up to the reception, and the receptionist kind of thought we were checking in together. Like, no, we're separate rooms, just met. Like, and that's kind of how it kept going. Like, we connected on the 11th of the 1st. We swapped numbers at 1:11 in the afternoon, and the 11s have just never stopped. The 8s have never stopped. They've always been a part of our journey. But that all sounds lovely, right? Oh, this sounds like a little fairy tale. It's so lovely. Not necessarily. We said, oh, look, we'll swap numbers and we'll catch up for lunch after we settle in. So we caught up for lunch, and we're having lunch, and my phone rang. It was my son. I was talking to him, and I got the phone, and Elise said, "Oh, who's that?" I said, "That was my son." She goes, "Oh, how old is your son?" And I was like, "Oh, he's 10." And like,
so I'm trying to figure out the maths. I'm like, I thought he was about 35 years old, and I'm sitting there going, this guy was talking about past lives, which I'd never heard of, but I was like, wow, this just resonates. It feels so true. And I think this is why I've come to Uluru. I've come to meet my future partner, and this is why I'm here. And yeah, then I'm trying to figure out the maths of, right, so he must have had his kid at this age. I said, wait, so how old are you? He's like, I'm 48. I was 28. And I was like, whoa, how embarrassing. I thought he was my partner. That's just disgusting. I can't believe 21 years, 20 years at that point. I was just in complete shutdown mode. Instantly, he looked different. I was like, I can't believe I thought he was attractive. Like, my whole world and my whole plan changed in that instant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we turned up that night. It was the arrival night for the conference, and we walk in, and the people greet us and go, "Oh, so like, how long have you and your husband been together?"
I was so triggered.
We're not together.
48.
So what turned things back?
Hmm.
What got things back on track?
It was undeniable. Like, the connection, like, the thing about twin flames is, like, it's so crazy. The whole journey is crazy, but there's a runner and a chaser. And here is the runner, here is the chaser.
It can flip. I do feel like it flips,
But predominantly
yeah.
At the beginning, in our experience, there was quite defined roles. So, and the chaser tends to have rejection and abandonment issues. Thank you. Put my hand up to that. So you've got this sense of deep soul connected love, and you're like, you just know that this is the right thing, and they're like, I've got to get out of here. This doesn't make any sense. And there's always something that's super challenging, whether it's cross-cultural or same-sex or big age gaps or something. For us, it was a really big age gap, even though it doesn't really look like it. It's a massive age
but it
gap.
took about four and a bit months. So for the 4 months after the conference, we were just friends. But we would talk every single day. We would be sending audio recordings back to each other of the animal totems that were flying towards us, and they had such deep meaning, and the angel numbers that we were seeing, and the repeating numbers, and the song lyrics that were playing randomly on our music tracks, and all of these incredible dreams. So we were in this constant going back and forth of connection, but I was just like navigating. I feel so safe, and we were just so raw and so vulnerable and honest from the very beginning, because for me, I just felt, well, he's not a potential partner, so it's like, if he doesn't like me, I don't care. And so we were able to really just be ourselves, which I've never ever been able to do before. From the very beginning, we shared the most deepest parts of ourselves, and we just loved and accepted each other for the way we were. And so we had these incredible miracles that would bring us together. Like, we did a breathwork and sound healing together. The first time that Tim had ever done one, we did it on Freshwater Beach with a little audio box from a guy called Matt Omo that I used to go and do his sound healings. And Tim had the most like psychedelic experience seeing infinity sign. And
yeah, I was like literally connected. My energy went into the earth and connected entirely with the earth. I felt as one with the earth, and then shot up into the cosmos and just connected with the cosmos. And I felt this complete and utter connection to all things. I'd never experienced that ever before. With all the drugs I'd taken and the LSD and everything, no, I never had something like that before. And it blew my mind. I was like, how much money could I have saved on drugs if I knew about breath work? Like, this is crazy. But what it did, and I think it was really magnified by the twin flame energy, was that it brought all the guilt and shame that I had stored in my body to the surface. And I was literally convulsing for about 3 minutes at the end of the breath work, and it was that guilt and shame releasing, because I'd never been in a safe space to release the guilt and shame, because I'd had a history of betrayal. I'd done all sorts of crazy, wild, and yeah, unfortunate things to myself and other people. So I had shingles. I had shingles come up after that session about 3 or 4 days later, and it was the worst case of shingles I've ever seen. It was like all across my shoulders, up my neck, down my arm, across my back, and it was red, raw blisters. And there's nothing you can do about it apart from painkillers. And it was shame. It was guilt and shame coming to the surface, literally, physically coming to the surface. And it also showed me in my meditations that there was 3 past lives that were connected to the karma that I was balancing in this life by my betrayal. And there was a life where I was murdered for my power, and there's literally these scars from the blisters front and back with entry and exit point of the spear that killed me. Like the pain started in my neck with the shingles and severe nerve pain, like your throat's getting slit. That was another life where my throat was slit for my money and wealth. And then all the shingles here was a life where I was betrayed for my healing abilities, and I helped people with energy and herbs, and I was burnt at the stake. I had to carry the cross through the town, and I was burnt, and that represented that death point fire. So it was really interesting, because it really explained to me a lot of why I had attracted quite trustworthy and honest women in my life, but I had like this propensity for betrayal and cheating, because I wasn't creating new karma. I was actually balancing a lot from previous life. So it was a horrible and an amazing situation. And I've been working on letting guilt and shame go since that point. But I knew once I had that sound healing, I was like, that's what I'm here to do. This is what I'm here on the planet to do. There was just that defining moment, drop. Okay, if this is what I can do for me, what can I do for other people?
And we sort of just continued on working with sound and vibration and breath work. But we did have a few other sort of very, very strong guidance from spirit about trying to bring us together, even to the point of we went to a spiritualist church one time and we were just friends, and we literally had this discussion of Tim saying, look, I think we're meant to be together and we're twin flames. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And we went to this spiritualist church, and you arrive and you give the medium a flower, and he was doing a flower reading for each person without knowing who it was. And we were at the very end, and so he pulled out my flower. And he started talking very generic and saying, about my work. And he asked whose flower it was. And I put my hand up, and he said, Spirit's telling me you have a question. Like, do you have a question? And I thought, awesome. Like, I can control this situation. I want nothing to come through about this guy. It's just all going to be about my grandmother, who I want to come through. And I said, yeah, I really would love to connect with my grandma. And he was like, right. And he started describing her, and he had the right one and on my mother's side. And he said, okay, right, well, your grandma, yes, she's here. She's not with you. She's standing behind him. She has her hand on his shoulder, and she's telling you he's a good guy. You can trust him because you two are together, yeah? And I'm like, no, we are not together. And he's like, okay, well, there's always free will. But anyway, and so it was just this like constant signs and synchronicities of, being shown and really sort of connecting us to, we're meant to be together. And I had to break open my heart chakra, which was also through a sound healing. And I felt that, I saw that, I felt my heart chakra open. And I drove home from Tim's house crying because I was grieving that I thought, this is not the way it's supposed to be, but I actually do love him and I want to be with him. So that was sort of a short version of how we turned it back around eventually.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I've been toying with this question because in my readings of twin flames, it's not always a beautiful, true path of connection. There's often this kind of bringing up of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Did you experience a lot of that?
We still do.
Instantly.
It's the most incredibly difficult thing that I've ever done. I can see why most twin flames we know are in separation. And we were blessed in 2020. The universe guided us up to the Blue Mountains away from all of the craziness in Sydney, and it was a true blessing. And we were lucky in that time to have space and time to do a lot of healing work with each other, for each other. But one of the most important messages that came through is that you have to, no matter what happens, we have to stick together. And we've had to go through separation, but we do separation in our relationship. So we both have really polarized experiences and trigger points. So it's been like really intense. But we know our divine purpose is so strong. We know that we're here to do something so powerful that we just keep turning up and just keep turning up. And that's why we say to people, like, twin flame, it sounds so lovely, it sounds so romantic. It's not romantic.
No.
It's
not in our experience.
Not for us. It's been the greatest challenge by far to keep showing up and to keep having to do that shadow work and to come back to love through all of the triggering and all of the upheaval of all those old deep childhood traumas and wounds that are virtually polarized.
And a perfect example of that, like when we first came together, I just had this experience of being with somebody who was cheating and there was that betrayal wound, which also uncovered for me in the hospital, and then afterwards repressed sexual abuse in my childhood that I was not aware of. And so there was this deep wounding for me around betrayal and not feeling safe with men. And then when Tim and I met, and I hear all of his stories about, him being the betrayer, I remember saying to myself, I will never, ever be with somebody who's cheated before. I've been too hurt by it. I'm not going to do that. And so that was even something of me feeling that I had to trust that, we're all reflections. I guess we have that frequency that I attracted those experiences in the past because of where I was at with my own journey. And so I had to just really surrender into trusting that I have been working on raising my vibration, and I'm continuing to commit to doing that and healing these aspects of myself so that I don't attract that same situation. And to date, neither of us have ever actually crossed a line. We've had experiences. We've definitely both had experiences where we've come up against having to make a conscious choice. Do we act from the past, or do we act and make a new path? And then the biggest, most, transformative thing that we do, which so many people are quite shocked by, is that we are so brutally honest, even when we know that it's going to trigger off the other person's wound. And with that, I think it creates this deeper sense of trust and this deeper sense of safety, because even though one of us may be sharing an experience that we had, if it might be connecting with another person, we haven't actually crossed that line to then have to say, okay, I'm sorry, I cheated on you. We actually have both been able to maintain that, the urges or that desire, and stay within our integrity, but also to show up with each other and say, this is what happened and this is how I felt, or this is what was said. And that's the deep triggering for us when it's wound to wound. It's like, I just want to run and get the hell out of there. You want to run and get the hell out of there too sometimes. And it's just, it's huge. It's been massive, but we've been doing a lot more. We continuously show up and do our own work. We meditate every day. We do breath work and sound journeys ourselves, and different types of spiritual practices. And without all of those, we wouldn't be together. We couldn't be. We wouldn't be able to face ourselves.
We've never had an alcoholic drink together. We've like, that's huge in its own right. Now, most of the problems I had in previous relationships were alcohol based. And, you know, that's a point, almost a point of pride, because I didn't know that I could be the person that I am now. And it's a humbling experience to find yourself and find a new version of yourself. And I look at it now, like my journey forward is balancing the scales. Like, I created so much destruction. You know, I was a drug dealer for 10 years. I helped people hide from their trauma. That's what I was doing. I was hiding from my trauma. I help people do the same. Now I'm helping people heal from their trauma. It's this beautiful balance. And I feel so blessed to have had those experiences so that I can draw on that for the work that I do now. It's not something that I in any way reject, as much as it can make me cringe sometimes when I'm in a meditation and it's showing me something that I did, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But, you know, there's this nurturing of this self now. If I can change to the degree that I've changed, then anybody can change. So, yeah.
That's a wonderful ending thought. Now, very often at this stage, I ask my guests, you know, what do you see as the deeper lessons? What are the takeaways for the people that are watching this interview? And I think you've covered a few of them off in that last little passage. But if you'd like to, have you got any more thoughts that you would like to add, or any final takeaways?
The truth will set you free. I think that saying has set me free so many times. The truth will set you free. If you're not telling the truth, then that feeds the monster. If you tell the truth, as difficult as it might be, it gives it a voice and it allows integrity to flourish. If you hide little things, then, you know, that will spiral into subconscious guilt and shame, and which ending up in addictive patterns and bad outcomes. The truth will set you free. I think that's really very simple.
I think also just expanding on finding your own practice, finding whatever it is, like having the freedom to choose, to really tap in and to go, well, what does resonate for me? You know, it doesn't have to be something that's textbook, and doesn't have to be a religion, but what is it? Like, is it nature? Is there something that you just get this sense, this feeling of peace and stillness and support? And I guess, in that there's so many different options, but the number one thing that was a game changer for both of us, and that continually keeps us moving forward with our evolution and our soul's purpose, is meditation. Because without meditation, how do we create that space for ourselves to be able to even know what's going on? There's so many distractions in the world. So how can we, even if you just I remember starting with 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at lunch, and 5 minutes before bed or more, and just to even just breathe. But, you know, we use sound, so we love listening to sound with that we've created. It helps that logical mind to take the back seat. But yeah, the biggest takeaway for both of us would be meditation.
Beautiful. And so I'm going to kind of segue into asking you then, as part of this spiritual development, you created Source 88. So perhaps you'd like to talk a little bit about what that's all about.
Yeah, well, you know, January 2020, we decided to open a business. Great time to open a business. We were pretty quiet for the next couple of years, but we were running events through COVID. We were doing sound healings and chakra dances illegally. But it's just evolved. It's as we've evolved, it's constantly evolved. Now we started doing breath work and sound. Then we started to do chakra dances and crystal bowl workshops. It came out of that. We ended up finding crystal bowls, well, they found us. So we started to sell crystal bowls. We started to train people how to play crystal bowls. We're now releasing our first facilitator training program. So we're training the trainers of the trainers.
So that we can spread these offerings worldwide, because we can't do it all. We've been traveling so many different places, and now we want people who are in a similar space and purpose mission to be able to carry this work forward. We can't do it on our own.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Our divine purpose came through in 2019, and it was very clear. You're here to raise the vibration of the planet, and you're here to activate others to do the same. It made no sense at the time.
Yeah.
It made zero sense.
I was a personal trainer and Tim was a
shop fitter. I was building restaurants and cafes. She was training rich people how to be fitter. And then fast forward 5 years and it makes perfect sense. And so we're really kind of activating others to do the same through our breathwork and sound healing mentorship programs, our facilitator training, our crystal bowl training. So we've trained Reiki masters and all sorts of healers and yoga teachers, and these crystal bowls are out there raising the vibration of people in the world, and they're raising more people's vibration. And it's like, wow, it makes perfect sense. Now, at the time, it was ludicrous.
Yeah, so you're still up in the Blue Mountains?
No, we're based now, well, currently we're based in Sydney, the northern beaches of Sydney.
Right.
But that's not going to be for very long. We're going to be sort of moving around a little bit. And yeah, we are based in Sydney though.
You're based in Sydney?
No fixed address.
Yeah. So if people want to connect with you and find you online, what's the best way for them to do that?
We've got our website, which is source88.com.au. And then we're also on Facebook and Instagram as Source88. We're getting our YouTube channel going, but it's really not been one of our biggest focus. So social media and our website's got all our contact details as well.
Right.
What we do.
Well, look, Tim, Elise, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. To wrap it up, if you'd like to learn more about what Tim and Elise do and you didn't catch what they just said, there will be a page set up on my website that will give you all those links that Tim and Elise talked about. And if you'd like to learn more about my work, about finding magic and how to use structured intuition, you'll find all the details on my website as well. It's vincentgmailing.com. And if you click the red podcast button at the top, that will take you to the links to get the full list of podcasts, where you can get them, where you can join the discussions of the episodes. And as I said, the list of links to the various guests' pages that gives the information and the contact details. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say thank you very much again, Tim and Elise. And yeah, looking forward to the next episode, whoever it may bring. Thanks.
Thank
you, Vincent. Thank you so much.